Today's Transport Evolved, Formula E, more upcoming plugins from Volkswagen, self-driving Google cars, a surprise i3 purchase, BMW gets all confused over their own range extender, and a new portable charging station for DC rapid charging cars. Do. That's meant to be the intro music.
Love it.
Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon and good evening. I am Mark Chasley and you are watching Transport Evolved. You may have noticed there was no intro there. That's because Nikki isn't here, and Nikki is the one who controls all the magical buttons that does that. So it's just me, so you've got just a standard Google Hangout version of the show today, but that's quite good, I think. And I am joined today by the absolutely wonderful Michael Thwaite, who is the Vice President, I believe, now for Plug-in America. Is that correct?
I am. How about that? Yeah, I don't quite know how I weaseled my way into that, but hey, there you go. How about it?
I still have you down on the show notes. There's Vivi President, because I noticed the error and then never corrected it, so I should do that now quickly.
You should fix that. That's a mess. So how's things? Isn't this exciting? We've got no Nikki to keep us in check, and we can just do anything. We can just go wild. We'll talk about anything. We don't want to talk about anything but Transport Evolved. Or,
yeah, let's talk about junk food. Oh, I'm so good at junk food. I could talk about it for hours.
So could I. I could tell you why it's a bad idea and why you must never do it.
It's never a bad idea. There's just to throw it out there how weird it's getting in the UK right now. Cadbury's, because they're now owned by Kraft, who now own everything. We're getting really weird mixed Cadbury's chocolate now, so you can get bags of mixed Cadbury's chocolate with Oreos thrown in and with chewable wine gums thrown in as well, all mixed up together. It's amazing.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It's a recipe for awesomeness, I think you'll find. I'm just doing a quick check to make sure that YouTube is getting the stream. It is excellent, so that is all good. We should move on to the first part of the show, which I've called Part 0, which is the Where is Nikki part. As I should go over this fairly quickly. As people know, we have been working with the Wave, which is a big EV kind of event in and around Switzerland and Germany in Europe, and it covers about 2,000 kilometers, and over the course of 2 weeks many electric vehicles, we're talking on the actual Wave up to 100, and then in each location they get joined by huge amounts more. They go on a tour around various places, through BMW factories, big wind farms, and they visit schools and they talk to kids about modern transport and why electric transportation is the future. It's very cool. Nikki set off to go there about 2 days ago, was making great progress. She got through the UK very easily, and quite surprisingly easily, I think, compared to some of our rapid charging stations, but she got through them absolutely fine, got into France, and then hit a few problems, and basically the first charging station she went to didn't work, which is something we planned for, and she'd been planned for this meticulously. As you know, she had an open Google document with all of her plans in and multiple redundancy, so she's had 2 or 3 charging stations she could go to if that one was broken. She went to the next one, which was in all the charging databases, didn't actually exist in the real world. She went to the next one. That one had existed at one point but is now closed down, and no one had taken it off of the maps, and essentially went through all of her redundancy and got to the point where she couldn't physically go any further. There was no way she could travel any further, and so we've talked to the Wave people, and Nikki's on her way back to the UK now, and we're going to cover the Wave from here. We've got lots of connections in the Wave, so they'll be sending us lots of photographs and information, so we'll still cover it. But so Nikki is quite sleep deprived at the moment, somewhere in between France and her house. I'm not quite sure where exactly.
It's such a shame, though, but talk about shining a light on how great the UK has become, compared to Europe. I always thought Europe was this great bastion of electric charging, but no, look at that. The UK.
I think there are certain pockets. I think there are certain countries that really do it very well. But I believe the countries like Ireland, who one company has set up a countrywide network, and so they have complete control over all the charging stations. They made sure they work, and they've got a vested interest. But I think Europe, mainland Europe's like where the UK is, but worse, which is lots of different companies all competing, and many of them are just interested in saying, we've got 1,000 chargers online. They don't actually care how many of them don't work or stopped working a year ago and they're taken out. They don't reduce that number because...
Wow. So it's just bragging. It's just bragging rights. That's all they're going for.
That's my opinion. That's a very personal opinion, I think so. But I definitely know of maps in the UK of charging stations I know that have never worked. There's one down the road from me. My nearest charging station has never worked in 3 years, and is still on the charging database. They're listed as working. And
yeah, I mean, without wanting to go off on a rat run, we have exactly the same in the US, where most of the charging databases will tell you about all of the Nissan dealers that have chargers. And of course, the reality is that I don't know, straw poll, 50% of them have the chargers, but they don't know where they are. They're not plugged in. They're not necessarily properly configured. 40% of them don't have the charger at all. They're just listed as a Nissan dealer on the network. And the other 10% are the 10% that have got the charger front and center with a guy there who knows how it works and will help you out, sort of thing. But how do you pick those in and amongst all of the others? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Oh, well.
And we're definitely going to have a few articles out of this, and
yeah.
The biggest viewpoint that I've got on it is a lot of planning went into this from Nicky's viewpoint and my viewpoint and the community's viewpoint, because they helped Nicky. And
yeah.
If we all couldn't create this trip with all of our experience, where does that leave the average person who just buys a plug-in car because they feel that's the right thing they should do and think, well, we'll take it on our yearly camping holiday to France. It must be easy.
Yeah.
And that's the worrying part of this, I think, is we're not quite at the point where I think we'd convinced ourselves we'd got to.
Yeah, I think you might be right. And I think that in itself is, that's science. That's science for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll sort it out. It'll get there, and hopefully this will be a bit of a stick we can beat some charging networks up with. Woo!
Absolutely.
So let's move on to our first part.
Definitely.
I've called this, I like giving themes, so this is our new cars and events part. So the first piece of news that I thought was particularly interesting this week is Formula E, the upcoming race with lovely, cool, fast electric cars that will take place in 10 cities around the world, actually taking place in the cities next to these amazing landmarks, because they don't need to worry about noise pollution, they don't need to worry about pollution. Absolutely brilliant. They did a official launch ceremony in Beijing for the Chinese section of this, and they announced that they have paired and partnered with Chinese TV channel CCTV5, which is another free-to-watch channel, which fits with the ethos that they've got in the UK, where it's on ITV, so anyone in the UK can pick up ITV. It's free to watch, it has adverts, but you don't pay a subscription. And it's also on a free-to-watch Japanese TV show, and in the US and in 88 other territories, it's on Fox Sports, which I hope is free to view. I'm not 100% sure on that. That's Michael might know more than I do.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, because it depends. I think some of Fox stuff gets made public, some of it is held back on pay-per-view. But you know what? This is the days of the internet. I feel confident I'll be watching it.
Somehow you'll be able to track down feed. And I believe I read something before that said the whole Formula E ethos was that they wanted at least this first year to be available and open to as many people as possible. So I would be surprised if Fox Sports got it over another TV channel that was free to air. I think they would usurp some little bit of income to keep that. And I just thought it's absolutely brilliant that view that they're going down, that more people should see this, is exactly what they needed to do to begin with, because they're essentially trying to launch a new sport.
Yeah, and I think also that might be partly why they are going on the free networks right now, just because there isn't that huge money behind it that is is where it'll go when all of the TV companies are fighting over it, which they will be soon.
But yeah, I think they will be. Are you planning to go along to any of the races? Is there any near you?
Not very, unfortunately. None of them are close. I mean, I would love to go. Maybe I'll get an opportunity, but I'm going to try. I'll certainly try.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be someone from Transport Evolved in the London one. We will make our way down there, and our great friend Robert Llewellyn's one of the commentators for it. So he's been brought on as the tech dude, the tech
I've
geek.
heard. Yeah, yeah, exactly. He's going to be explaining how batteries work to gearheads.
Which is, I think, and that's what's going to be fascinating, especially if they have people who coming from more traditional racing and they don't necessarily know what to expect or what to see. To have someone there who actually has an idea of what it's like to drive cars that use the same propulsion mechanism day to day, I think is a very good idea.
Yeah, and Robert's draw is that he can draw from this pool of supporters and fans from his acting work and draw from his EV side, and hopefully he'll bridge that gap between the gearheads who don't want to watch it, because why would you want to watch a whole bunch of battery-powered scrap racing around in the middle of a town, which is a phrase that I heard about the Isle of Man TT, the electric version. And it'll change people's minds. Hopefully he'll bring just one or two people in that'll then spread the word that, wow, it was really awesome being able to sort of like see the drivers dealing with the corners and hearing the sound of the tires scraping as they fight for grip, sort of thing. Instead of just comparing the loudest to the even loudest cars.
Yeah. I do have a friend who loves Formula One. He's one of those people that gets up at like 3 a.m. to watch the races when they're in different time zones.
Yeah.
And he's at the moment quite skeptical of Formula E because one of the aspects he really likes is the sound and the noise. And I've been trying to convince him that it's not going to be utterly quiet. And I've got a little plan in my head. He's a very good writer, whether he admits it or not. He's a very good writer and a very, very good editor. I want to send him along to the Formula E race and have him report on it, because I'd love to get that idea of a proper person who's into Formula One and see what their view is of Formula E and whether they think it's something that we could get an audience to move across to, or whether there is a distinct separate audience to it.
Yeah, no, good, neat trick.
I will get it, and I'm sure he won't pass up a trip to London, because he's like that. The next news story is a quite UK-centric one. I apologise, but unlike the US, we have the Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid on sale here, along with a couple of countries in Europe and soon to be Russia, I believe, in Europe too. But not in Europe. I've appropriated Russia into the European Union there unintentionally.
Well done, Russia. Good job.
They have no choice now. It has been said on this podcast. But it's just I wanted to include this because I thought it was quite interesting. Basically, not this weekend, but next weekend, if you're in the UK, you can go along to Mitsubishi dealers who are going to sell the plug-in hybrid Outlander, and you can go along, and they're having what they're calling a discovery session, where you can go along and there'll be experts there on the car who will talk through the car with you. They'll explain its different drivetrains, its EV-only mode, how you charge it, what the charging network's like. They even go through the smartphone app with you and talk about how the UK grant process works. So basically, they're trying to demystify the car for the ordinary person. And I thought what was very interesting is Nissan and Renault have done sort of tours around the UK, but they've never really done that situation where you come to us, we have some experts here, and the fact that they're going to get experts in, they're not just relying on the normal salesmen in the dealerships to sell these cars, I think was a very good idea, and I just wondered what everyone else thought of it, so I thought I'd include it.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting because obviously over here we're having some trouble, as you know, getting the Outlander up and working and on sale. Constant changes with regulations are making it difficult, and I think Mitsubishi have basically thrown the towel in for this year. I think the plan is to bring it in next year. I think was the last I heard. But it's interesting that they're sort of throwing the doors open and saying, "You come to see us." I wonder how successful that will be.
Yeah. I agree. That's going to be the big turning point, and I know there's quite a few people in the EV world who are interested in this car because it's the first plug-in hybrid that I'm aware of that has a rapid charging port on it too.
Right, I didn't know that. That's good.
Yeah, it comes with a Adamo connector, which makes it very, very interesting from an EV point of view. and I'm quite intrigued to see if this event gets more people test driving it or more people buying it. I think if it works, I think Mitsubishi might be onto something.
I don't know. I'm gonna weigh in. I'm gonna say I'm gonna be skeptical because I think the only people who are going to turn up are the people who know what an Outlander PHEV really is, and everybody else is just going to be. I'll just check out the regular Outlander at my local dealership. Why would I want to trek, any kind of distance? So I don't know. I'm skeptical.
It is. I think they did miss a trick not holding it on the bank holiday weekend. There's definitely a culture in the UK of bank holiday weekends. You go out and you look around car showrooms.
Yes.
I don't know why, but that's a thing in the UK. So
That's
I think it is the trick.
Okay.
But good for them. Next news story is about Volkswagen. Volkswagen have announced that the 8th generation Passat, which is coming out next year, the Passat, I don't know if it has a different name in the US. This is where my knowledge fails me.
It's the Passat's a Passat in the US. Yep.
Excellent. So everyone knows what the Passat is. The 8th model, the 8th generation, is going to come as a plug-in version. The plug-in version will, they hope, have a range of about 31 miles, all electric, and a combined electric and standard fuel range of over 600 miles. It combines a petrol direct injection turbocharged engine, if people know what that means, with an 80 kilowatt electric motor, which is fairly standard in cars nowadays, and that's connected to a 9.9 kilowatt hour liquid-cooled lithium-ion battery pack. A top speed of about 130 miles an hour, and it will do 0 to 62 in about 8 seconds, maybe a tad less.
Okay, that's interesting because it looks like, oh dear, it's another in the middle car. It's two in the middle.
Oh, in the middle.
Yeah, it is, right? It's 31 miles means, I'd be able to do my grocery run and popped around to see friends and stuff like that. I guess that's okay. 90 kilowatts, it's going to be a little bit, it's not going to be a real rip snorter in electric mode, I don't think, with 90 kilowatts.
80 kilowatts.
Oh, sorry, 80 kilowatts. Yeah, I mean, the Ford Focus is 100, and it's spirited, kind of. I can't imagine 80 kilowatts in something the size of a Passat being more than... I mean, it's not going to accelerate, it's just going to gather speed, I think.
Yes, they have made the whole car slightly lighter. They've refined their techniques and the materials they're using it to make the whole car slightly lighter. They reckon they've got, I think, from the press release, about a 10% efficiency improvement in that. But I think you're right. In all electric mode, it's not going to blow anyone's socks off.
No, and it's also going to be. Actually, in fact, I think it has every box ticked for what's wrong with a gas engine in terms of, how we love electric cars. You hit the accelerator and bam, it's moving. Yep. Even if it's a diminutive i3, it's still out accelerating an M3 off the line, because by the time the M3 has figured out which of its gears it ought to be in, and it's wound the engine up, and it's got enough gas in there, and the things span up to fast enough speed, and the clutch is beginning to engage, the i3 is 3 or 4 car lengths down the road, slowing down for the next stop sign.
Yeah.
Well, so this car here, you're going to pull away, on an electric motor, then you're going to floor it, so it's going to go, oh, that's not going to work, I need the engine too. So it's going to crank the engine round and get that started up. Then that's going to start pick up speed, but it's not going to be very powerful because it's turbocharged. So it's got to wind up the turbocharger as well. So then the turbocharger is going to spin up, the revs are going to start to build up, and then it's all going to be over and done with before then all of a sudden there's going to be a clunk as it changes to the correct gear, and then you're going to take your foot off because after all that palaver, the game's over. The guy next to you at the lights is somewhere in the distance. It's just going to magnify that whole what's wrong with gas engines and auto gearboxes and all that clunkety driving.
And then I guess that reflects badly on the electric cars. If this becomes the first experience of a plug-in car someone has, it's not the best experience that they could have.
Yeah, because you know what, you get the same effect in a Prius, in a regular, ordinary, non-plug-in Prius. When you pull away on electric, it pulls away all smoothly, and you go, "Ooh, that's lovely." But to get a Prius to pull away with any kind of gusto, it involves kicking the engine in, and then the engine starts, the thing shakes, and you're like, the the magic is gone at that point.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's all good. I mean, well done, guys. You've got to do a hybrid anyway, because you're not going to be able to sell them anywhere soon if it's not a hybrid. So great, put a plug on it, because why wouldn't you? It's a piece of cord and a little charger, and some electronics. So so it's a move in the right direction. You can't knock them for that. But you're right. If that's somebody's first impression of an electric car, and they're an enthusiast, because I think, I don't know, I'm guessing, but maybe people with Passats are a little bit more auto enthusiasts than people who just pick up one of those Toyota Blands or Honda Accords or whatever.
Yeah, I described it, I think, maybe slightly unfairly, as family man meets middle management is where the Passat sits in my head.
Family man meets middle management. Yeah, I think that fits.
It's not the BMW executive car. It's the middle management guy who's got a kid, 2 kids, and maybe a dog, and they get the Passat because it's big, but it's still got a bit of luxury about it. Right.
I agree.
So what I do like, though, is it shows that Volkswagen seems to have waited a number of years past a lot of manufacturers for electric cars, but suddenly, in a very short amount of time, they're going to end up with quite a lot of electrified cars with plugs on. They're going to have the E-Up, there's going to be a plug-in hybrid Up, there's the Golf, there's the GTE, there's the plug-in Passat. So very quickly, they're going to go from a manufacturer who hasn't done electric cars or anything with a plug to having 5 or 6 or 7 plug-in cars in their catalogue.
That is a good move on the right. That's a right move. I was just actually thinking back at how do you fix the Passat, and I think the answer actually would be take out the 80 kilowatt motor and put in 150, right? Which isn't too difficult. I mean, electric motors the way they are, there's not a huge difference between a 150 kilowatt one and an 80 kilowatt. A bigger controller, yes, but cost-wise, I can't imagine it being that horrific. And then all of a sudden, you've got Mr. Family Man with the dog and the children, who've got the Passat that outdrags all the other Passats, and the Audi, A4s and A6s, the 2-liter Ts, and that kind of middle, like you say, the middle management-y kind of cars. And then you've got like a little stealth, dark horse.
And that's very much how it works with the Up range. I mean, I know the Up range is a completely different class of car, but the electrified version outperforms every other version of that car, but just because of the torque of the electric motor. And the batteries being down low allow it to have a much lower center of gravity. So the E-Up is the best car that you can get in that range in terms of performance.
Yeah, same with the Fiat 500. I've heard a couple of dealers and more than one owner saying it's undoubtedly the best Fiat 500. Same with the Smart. The Smart ED. How many people have reported that the electric version of the Smart is the right Smart?
Yeah.
The Smart.
Although they have had 3 goes at getting that right.
Well, and how did they do it? They did it by making the motor bigger. There you go.
That's true, and not going with Tesla's technology, which it was very interesting.
That was weird, but never mind.
Moving on to the next story, which is a very, very geeky story. We all know that Google, for a number of years, has been working on a self-driving car. They had a Prius, and I think they had a Toyota RAV4 or decked out at one point, but the Prius was their main sort of test mule. At first, it would only drive around the Google lot, which is actually quite a big lot. Then they allowed it onto public roads. It's done over 300,000 miles on public roads without incident, and without a human having to intervene at any point to stop an incident, which is absolutely amazing. Recently, they updated its software so it can now deal with things such as lane closures, train crossings, and cyclists who are a bit wobbly. It's absolutely fine with all those things now. And
wait a minute. Let me stop you for 1 second. Are we saying it wasn't able to deal with train crossings until the recent firmware update?
They didn't say that explicitly. One of the things they said is we've improved its ability to know what to do at train crossings.
Not see the barrier and just pull around it.
Try and overtake the train, maybe. But they've gone forward for the next step. They are now starting to build 100 prototype self-driving pod cars that they've got, essentially. To begin with, they're going to be limited to 25 miles an hour, and they're going to have a steering wheel and pedals, so the operator can intervene if they need to. But very soon they're going to start building these pod vehicles without any sort of human input controllable device. So you get into them, you say where you want it to go, you press the button, and it takes you there. And they're hoping to get a license to operate these 100 cars on the streets of California.
Yikes. I know that I know that ultimately a self-driving electric car is going to be more reliable and safer than a texting teen on the highway at 95 miles an hour. I don't disagree with that. But all I'm thinking right now is when I saw the video, with by the way, a design that only an engineer could love.
It looked a bit like a Dodgem that had been extended upwards, or you call them bumper cars, do you? In the US?
I think the guy at Google described it as we had the luxury of a clean sheet, so we could start and design whatever we wanted. And as he ushered those words, I thought to myself, this is going to look ridiculous, isn't it? And sure enough, guess what? Only a techie could love that. But the first thing I was thinking is, if I'm going to sit in it, geez, I hope it's got a lot of airbags.
Yeah, and it didn't seem to have windows.
No, windows. Well, that's at least, and I didn't see seatbelts either. So maybe in an accident, you can be safely thrown from the car.
Google have worked in a special ejector system that pushes you up and away from the danger.
Exactly. Yeah. That I don't know. I mean, obviously, I guess obviously it's just a frame that they put together and stuff like that. But I love the video. But the people who were sat in it looked very weird, because the people were sat, and apologies if you're listening to the show today, but I'm sitting bolt upright, straight, as though I was on like a pew in church. But they seemed to be sort of sat like that, nervously saying, "This is kind of fun," and. With no steering wheel in the cars that these people were put into. So
they did look terrified.
They looked initially very terrified. Once they got going, you could see them relaxing a little bit. They'd been a couple of times around the parking lot and they hadn't crashed, so their confidence was sort of starting to come through. But I just think it's amazing stuff that they're doing. I think the first time that a bird perches on the high-speed spinning camera assembly, and the car freaks out, it is going to be interesting. Or somebody.
All the car can see is a big white splodge immediately to the front left of the car, and keeps trying to drive around it. Exactly,
perpetually until eventually its battery goes flat. Or somebody throws a stone at it. It flicks up a stone from another vehicle. It's gonna. I don't know. I don't.
There's definitely some questions, and an interesting fact, a point that someone made quite a while ago on one of our comment threads on our site was that it's communal property, and generally humans aren't very good at looking after communal property. You just have to look at any sort of communal hallway in blocks of flats to see it's mistreated, no one hoovers it, no one really looks after it. It takes a very special kind of person, and I mean special in the kind of wonderful sense of special there, to take that upon themselves to clean up after other people. So we as a race, I guess, as a human race, have a couple of steps to make, I think, before self-driving cars become the mode of transport.
Yeah, it's interesting that you raise that, because it's something that's been niggling at in my mind, that when you get onto the also, when you get onto public transport, everything is designed to be easy, clean, and not get as grubby as it could possibly be. And I remember traveling on the intercity rail service in the UK, and I used to think it was a good day when the stain on the seat was something that I could identify and at least categorize. So these things, they're going to have to be like hard plastic seats, so people can just hose them down, and that to me is a real problem. I mean, it's almost like, what do? You have your own collapsible car interior that you carry in a briefcase, and it pops out inside the car, and that's yours, and then when you finished, because you look after it, you fold it up and put it back in a briefcase, and off you go. I don't know.
Car ponchos. You just put on one of those sort of rain things that you have at Disney World that just cover you, so you can just sit. It's going to be a very interesting as we transition towards it, because the only other way of doing it is to price it at a premium so that people value it more.
I don't think. I mean, I don't think that works either, because one thing that struck me, and I apologize, America, for saying this, but Americans don't look after the insides of their cars. Whenever I see a second-hand car in the UK, you would they'll run the gamut, from people who don't care to people who, meticulously detailing the inside of the car all the time, looking after it. It's surprising how mistreated the interiors of American second-hand cars seem to be. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or because people keep them too long or longer than Europeans. I don't know, but even people will show me, this is my posh car sort of thing. I've had it a few years, and you look at the inside and you think, oh dear, what happened there?
Did your son take this away and have a rave in it?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I don't know what that is in the corner, but it's moving. It's so I struggle with that problem. I think as much as we want to all be evolved and enlightened, when I'm 75 and I'm too stupid to drive anymore, I think there's still going to be a podule on my driveway that belongs to me and is the one that ferries me to the bingo, and then waits patiently somewhere around the corner where there's room for parking, and then comes and picks me up and takes me to back to the nursing home.
Yeah.
So
I can see. Yeah, there being a mixture between, because that's the utopian future is a community-owned self-driving pod system.
Yeah, well, wherever you are, there's a line of 5 of them waiting to pick people up. Yeah.
Whereas the reality, I think you're right, is going to be self-owned, self-driving cars to begin with. So you can go out to the pub, get absolutely blatted on the 10 pints of local ale, and then come back and not worry about the car.
Exactly. Go out, get giddy on the bingo, and be safely shuffled to the right home on your way back. Yeah.
Excellent. We should move on. That was part 1. Usually we'd have an ad break here, but because Google Hangouts work differently to Google Videos, because it's Google and Yahoo, and Google doesn't like doing things in a consistent way, there won't be an advert here, even if you are watching after the show, because I don't even think we can insert one. So on to part 2.
So given that we're not doing adverts, if you could throw a couple of coppers into our donation button, that'd be great. That would be
good. Part 2 is the BMW section, because BMW has been in the news in one form or another quite a lot in the past week. We're going to start with, it's another UK-centric story, but it's got a world focus, I believe.
Oh, this is a world story.
Which is the lovely BBC make a show called Top Gear, which is an entertainment show that a lot of petrol heads take a tad too seriously. It's never really been enamoured with electric cars, but one of the 3 presenters, James May, has recently bought or is buying a BMW i3 range extended electric car. Absolutely amazing.
This is good news.
I'm in two minds. Part of my brain goes, it's absolutely wonderful. He's embracing something that's got an electric motor in it. But part of me also knows that the running gag up until now on Top Gear, because he's known as Captain Slow, he's the sensible one. And he's been driving around in a Panda. I think that's a Ford Panda. I see.
Fiat Panda.
It began with an F. It was close.
Yeah.
And it's been a running joke that he's had that car until now. So I've got a feeling that it's going to be the new running joke is that he drives an i3, he drives an electric car, and he wasn't even confident enough to go fully electric. He's got the Rex, which he admitted himself should be called coward mode.
I suppose that's the downside. He's going to be called Captain Coward, and they're going to be making gags about him pushing the car here and pushing the car there, sort of thing. But I think that people support the underdog, right? And so. Yeah. There's going to be a body of viewers, I think, that are going to see what he's done and kind of rally around. So if he does have trouble with it, can't use it for this, or it doesn't work out for that, there'll be a group of people going, no, and supporting it. So I hope that long term, this is a good thing, because what's next? They get Model S and discover actually this is fun.
Yeah, and I think that it's now given them a benchmark. There is someone who, or will be someone on the Trooper presenters, who has everyday experiences with plug-in cars, and so they won't necessarily be making sweeping generalizations about what electric cars can do, what they can't do. They're going to find out very quickly that their standard and the batteries have to be replaced every 3 years and cost £10,000 won't work anymore, because very soon they're going to have someone who will have owned an electric car for longer than that. So I think in the long run it's probably a positive thing. In the short term, it's just going to be the butt of a lot of jokes, I believe.
Oh, definitely. You're right.
But
absolutely.
Good story, I hope. And it's a nice one to start off this section with. The second part, we're moving up to the big story. The second part is that it's emerged this week from a German website that BMW is already testing and road testing another car in their i range. This comes after earlier on this year, a BMW executive came forward and said they weren't going to make any other i range cars after the i3 and the i8 until they could have a better understanding of how popular they were. So it's a case of one part of BMW saying something and another part of BMW saying something else. So we don't really know quite what's going on. What was uncovered by this website is that supposedly it's another car in the i range. It's loosely based on the 2 Series Active Tourer, so it's a family-sized, slightly largish car, I guess. I'm not very good at describing cars. You'd think I'd be better at describing cars, really, but it's not a family, it's not a people carrier, but it's a larger car for someone with a family, I would say.
I think it's going to be it's going to be the i5. It's going to be something that falls between the two.
Yes.
My expectation is it's going to be plug-in hybrid. It's going to come quite soon. It's going to be, we're going to be comparing it to a Volt.
Oh, I see. So you don't think it's going to end up being compared, like the i3 was oddly compared with the Model S?
That's because there's absolutely nothing in the void, in the dark void between $50,000 and $120,000. There's nothing. People just skip to the next model. It's like, I don't know, it's crazy.
But I thought because of that, maybe possibly this car would end up being compared to the Model X.
I'm going to say no, because I think this is, as you say, because it's going to be like the 2 Tourer. If it's going to wind up being the 2 Tourer, it's going to be it's going to be it's going to be the thing that tempts Passat man to the BMW brand. Maybe when he hits that sales target and moves up a rung, and he's going to be looking at this and he's going to say, this is great. This is like my plug-in hybrid Passat, but this one now has a 50-mile range on its battery. And
a motor that's twice as powerful.
Yeah, exactly. And I look cool because I have the BMW Roundel on the front of my car. Who knows?
If you can hear barking in the background, this is my mildly upset dog who was fixed yesterday, barking at my neighbours who are talking outside my house. So I apologise for this. I might go and tell him to shush in a second. The next story, the BMW. BMW seems quite confused over their own range extender and what it is and what it isn't, and what it's eligible for and what it isn't eligible for. Earlier on this year, we got in January, we had a confirmation that even though BMW all the way through the i3 development was saying it would fit and would be eligible for the white sticker program in California, it wasn't going to be. And just this week, we found out that in New Jersey, it does make the car have emissions, and therefore does mean the car has to pay sales tax. You live in New Jersey, I believe.
I do.
So I'm going to hand this over to you, and I'm just going to poke my head around the door and shush my dog a little bit.
You should do that. Go shush something. Yeah, this is kind of this is a story that's got a lot of people up in arms, and it's much more difficult than I initially thought, because New Jersey has an absolutely amazing clause in its tax laws that says if you have a zero emission vehicle, you don't have to pay sales tax. So that, or VAT, which is analogous to VAT, and that's a big thing. When I was lucky enough to take delivery of my Tesla Roadster, that was an insane $100,000 car. Now, normally the sales tax on top of that would be 7%. So that's another $7,000 out of your pocket on tax. Now, the i3 is half that price, but that's still, it's still just shy of $4,000 to add to the cost of your vehicle. And the thing that's got people up in arms about this is not having to pay tax, because we all understand, death and taxes, but is the fact that they were promised by, well, they were even sold, I would say, by the dealers and by BMW confidently that they wouldn't have to pay tax. And in some respects, it's a storm in a teacup, because this is only New Jersey that's suffering this. All of the other states are looking on in disbelief, going, well, yeah, you pay sales tax, that's what you do. But of course, in New Jersey, where people have sort of made the decision to buy the Rex and justified buying the Rex and stretched financially to get the model that they wanted with the extras that they wanted, and now discover they've got to add another $3,800, I think it is, to the total cost of the vehicle. It's a bit unpleasant. So there are calls for BMW to step up and pay the difference, and we've had a rather lousy response from BMW, which basically said those who predicted, I forget the exact terms, but it was those who expected not to pay tax were being premature. And they seem to have missed the point that it was actually they who said that. So that's all a bit confusing and a bit somewhat disingenuous from them. But the reason I have a hard time with it is actually because in such simplicity, it's so simple. You buy a car, it has an engine, you pay tax just like a plug-in Prius, just like a Chevy Suburban or GMC Suburban, whatever. You pay the sales tax. We as an electric owners, get this perk that is great. But the problem is that a lot of the people who've bought the Rexes have actually bought them kind of with good intentions. The people I know, and I don't know many Rex owners, have bought the Rex engine because they want to be able to use their EV more often. They want to push the envelope of running an EV. They want to be able to do that 75-mile journey, which they would normally have taken their diesel truck. They want to be able to take the electric car, and all being well, 99% of the time they'll hit their destination on electric, never using any gas, building their confidence in electric cars, whilst saving the planet, as it were, and not freaking out because they think they're about to run out of power. So for those people who bought them for those reasons, I feel quite bad, actually. I feel quite bad.
I think, and I do think that they've bought it in good faith. I don't think any of them, as you said, I don't think any of them have gone into it going, I know I should be paying tax, but BMW says I shouldn't, so if I do, it's their fault. I think everyone's bought it with good intentions and just gone by the advice they've been given.
Yeah. So I mean, there are some conversations going on about how BMW should chip in, or maybe the taxation should be reduced because it's not really intended to burn gas, or maybe you should only pay sales tax on the option, which is the $4,000 range extender. But I think, unfortunately, we're just really getting into the weeds at that point.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any way, realistically, that you're going to get legislation tweaked to make some infinitesimal case, because the next thing you're going to have people with Chevy Volts coming along saying, well, I have 40 miles of non-gasoline, so I should have a reduction. And
where does the line has to be drawn somewhere, and it's very definite where it's drawn at the moment. To make it fuzzy isn't the solution. I suppose from a UK point of view, and I know this isn't a UK case, but in the UK the consumer is always responsible for paying tax. So even though my tax in terms of what my income is done, well, mine isn't because I'm freelance, but if I work for a company, it's just taken out of my paycheck. I don't see money and then have to give it back. I just get given my money after the tax has been taken. But if my company makes a mistake or the tax office makes a mistake, I'm the one whose responsibility it is to remedy that. It's my responsibility to notice that. So if the Inland Revenue notice that in 2 years' time that I owe them 10 grand's worth of tax because they haven't been taking enough out of my salary, that's my fault. They can demand that, and they can demand I pay that instantly because it's my fault I didn't notice. So from my point of view, I see this and go, well, it sucks, but it's the consumer's responsibility. But I don't quite know how that works in the American system. And that is a very harsh way of looking at it, but that is the UK way.
No, everything you say is 100% correct. It's pretty much the same in the US. You're responsible for making sure that you've paid enough tax. You actually, the company that you work for won't necessarily withhold any tax if you don't want them to. You can actually say to your company, don't hold any tax, I'll make the payments myself. And what we do on a yearly basis, we have, we sit down with TurboTax or a spreadsheet, and we have a big reckoning, and we usually work out that we've paid a little bit more tax than we ought to do. We get a nice check back. That's how most people probably do it. At the end of the day, you're totally correct, and they should simply make the tax payments that they do. The thing that just makes it all fuzzy is that BMW was so vehement about this message that there won't be any sales tax. So it's just reflecting terribly badly on BMW right now.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be very, very interesting to see how it's resolved and what happens with it. And it's now just got me waiting for the next thing that the Rex, they've said the Rex is eligible for, that it isn't. So I shouldn't, I don't take any joy out of this. I make jokes at it because that's kind of what I do. But I do feel sorry for the people who bought it. We should move on to the next story, which is a BMW Group story. It's actually about Mini, who is owned by the BMW Group. Basically, what happens when you take the British Mini designers and you match them up with the Italian Superleggera designers, basically you end up with a stunning-looking electric car that's kind of inspired by the 1950s. I don't know if you've managed to be able to see this car yet.
I have seen it. I have looked at it. I have whiled away many a good few minutes ogling at it, when I should have really been doing some good work. I mean, this is slightly frustrating to see, actually, because this is the Mini that we were supposed to get at the end of BMW's program. Right? We did the Mini, we did the Active-E, and Mini are clearly capable of making something drop dead gorgeous that will stop traffic. And why is that not parked in my driveway?
Yeah, it's very rare that I look at a car and go, that's stunning. And this car, it made me stop. And I was having a conversation with my friend I was talking about earlier, who's into his Formula One. He's very much into cars and their design. And he saw this and he wants one. And it got us talking about why there aren't really any electric small convertible cars, because you would have thought that's kind of a good market. You wouldn't need that powerful electric motor to make them speedy. The batteries all down the bottom make them very great for corners. And we got talking about an electric smart convertible would be an ideal candidate for an electrified version. He doesn't even like the smart convertible, but had to admit that sticking batteries and electric motor in it would make it far more interesting than it is at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the Smart ED, the convertible version of the Smart ED, I think is selling pretty well because it's cool. I mean, it's funny. I've had conversations with owners of Lotus Elises, and the funny thing there is there's a car that's very, very similar to the Tesla Roadster, and when they ask you, the inevitable, how far can you go? You say about 250 miles on a full charge. They look at you kind of puzzled, and they're like, "Oh, my Lotus Elise only does about 150. That's crazy." I mean, they have faster recharge options, obviously, but you're right. This car, although when I see this car, I kind of picture myself just getting it on a morning and just driving. If there was ever a car to drive across America, this just looks like
Yeah.
the car the car you would want to do that in.
You just have a picnic basket in the back that you
Yep.
just refill whenever you got the chance, and you just stop in the middle of nowhere.
That's perfect. That's it. You would just while away 2 months, just going like a dot-to-dot puzzle between Whole Foods markets where you get really good food and fast charging stations.
Yeah.
And you would just while your life away, and then you would wake up one morning and realize that you should have retired and that you were now very old, but you just had a really cracking decade, you know.
Yeah. That I think that puts this car. I think everyone's view on the car. That's stunning. Right,
Yeah.
we shall move on to part 3. This isn't an official break, as we you're watching live, and I'm still not 100% sure if we can insert ads, but we do support.
Who would pay for this anyway? I mean,
We do have a donate thing on our site where you can sign up and you can help us move along. We are trying to move this site to bring you more and more news, and we've worked up slowly since September from 3 stories a day. We're now doing, on average, 6 stories a day. We are getting referenced by Jalopnik, by Boing Boing, by some major sites. So it's going well, but we need help to keep growing, basically. But we also support Chronovirus, which is a wonderful short story by the amazing Aaron Crocco, and we sometimes have a little advert for that. So I thought I'd say it's a name. It's a very good book. I've made it into an audiobook. It's awesome. Part 3. I do realise that Michael can only be with me for. Oh, well, I said we'd only be online for another 10 minutes, so we're trying to black through these last few stories. They're only small stories. There's a story from Iran, which I thought was very interesting. The last administration in Iran, which was run by President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, had increased import tax on cars to the point where it was about 90%. Which is amazingly high, which essentially caused a monopoly of 3 companies working together in that country, and means that if you're in that country, you don't really have a choice of what car to get. There's a dog here. I don't know if you can see him. Basically, the latest administration has now dropped all import tax, going down to 0 on any electric car or hybrid with an engine smaller than 2.5 litres. And I thought that was an amazing move to make.
I think that's a really positive move. Well done, Iran.
Yeah. See, there's not a lot more to say about that, but other than it's absolutely brilliant.
Because the next story is a big one, I think. Really big. We could make a whole show about this one, I think. But anyway.
So, do you want to introduce the next story while I sort out this wriggling dog?
I will. Go and wriggle the dog. So this next story is about the move. So and I love this story particularly because I kind of have this this bet going on with everyone that I speak to that one day our electric cars won't have chargers built in. They'll have just DC ports on the side because there'll be so many, charging ports will be, on your wall where you need them rather than in the car where you're tugging them about all the life of the car. I'm rambling because I'm getting past not telling you about the actual story, which is ChargeBox have created a product which is a portable CHAdeMO and CCS charger. And this is essentially halfway to my dream of not having this onboard charger. It's about the size of a small suitcase, so it's not tiny yet.
No.
In fact, it's probably about the same size as the charger that you find in most electric cars. But what's great about it is it will take pretty much any kind of input, single phase, 3-phase, low voltage, 120 volt, 240 volt, and convert it straight into DC to go straight into your battery. So this is really the universal power connector for an electric car, and I think heralds the beginning of the end of level 1 and level 2 charging stations. I think the only problem with this is the price. It's currently €15,000, which is about $20,000. Yeah. But that does not faze me at all. This will be, I'm going to make a prediction, this will be less than $1,000 in under 5 years. And I think 3 is more likely where that target will hit, where that boundary will be crossed. Because it's just electronics. It's very little extra complication than a regular EV, EVSE. And once people get hold of these things, once people start mass producing the connectors, mass producing the transformers required to step the voltage up, people start making the boards for controlling the thing, which is a little more complicated than an ordinary EVSE, that the regular level 2 EVSE will disappear, because why would we not all want to standardize on a single universal standard if it was so easy and cheap to do?
And I completely agree with everything you said. It kind of puts the standalone DC rapid chargers, which are a tad unreliable, to shame. If a company can come out and make a portable version which must be designed to withstand a few knocks and scrapes and bumps, and a standalone one in the ground which shouldn't have to cope with that, can't work. It's a real interesting device.
And the truth is, it already is quite cheap. Compared to an installed unit, this is quite cheap. And what this means is that we can get to that point where people can install these at, imagine if these were down to sub $1,000. You've got a choice. You can put an expensive level 2 in, or you can put 3 or 4 of these in. And once you get to that point, it doesn't matter if one's broken or 2 are broken, as long as there are another couple or 3 that are working. And as long as a guy comes around once every once a week to make sure that the wires aren't run over and things are all working, and then I think that gets us to that point where I can set off on a journey like I did this weekend. I did a 75-mile journey in the I3, and the reason I did it was because I knew that 20 miles from my destination was a reliable level 2 charging solution, 2 of. And I knew that they're looked after, and that's what made the difference. The fact that they were plentiful and that they were managed changed everything, and so we get back to Nicky and the Wave.
And I think what makes this really amazing from a UK and a Europe point of view is 22 kilowatts, which is 3-phase 32 amp, is pretty much available anywhere that's not residential. So anywhere that's got a business supply of electricity. Even some houses have 3-phase 32 amps. If it's a big house, will have that. It's still relatively rare, but any business location will have that. So the big stopping point for CHAdeMO and CCS DC rapid charging is that it costs huge amounts to install it. So with this device, you just install what we call a Type 2 connector, which can cope with 3-phase 32 amp. So a Zoe can turn up and pull 22 kilowatts out of this socket natively. So you install 2 of them because they're nice and cheap. That's a couple of grand, and then you buy one of these. So if anyone rocks up in a CHAdeMO or a CCS car, you bring this out, and then they can charge. It basically means you don't need standalone rapid DC charging stations, especially if, and I'm sure they will, they market a nice weatherproof, secure box for this.
Yeah, it's the beginning of the end.
And I would be very worried if I was ABB and DBT, who make the standalone big rapid chargers. I'd be quite worried about this product.
Quite nervous.
Excellent. Final story, which is we always tend to have these as final stories. Volkswagen have made their first attempt at an advert for an electric car that they produce. This time it's for the e-Golf. Usually with adverts, they're not brilliant. We usually laugh at them. I thought this one was particularly brilliant and actually picks up on a key part of what it is to own an electric car. It follows a man who's got his e-Golf, and he pulls into a petrol station to say goodbye to it for the last time. So you see him walking through the petrol station. He's tearing up as he sees the packets of crisps and the chocolate bars. He's no longer going to be able to impulse buy and then eat in the car so your other half doesn't know you've got them. He hugs the man behind the counter who's a bit put off by it. He even feels sad that he's going to miss the really bad coffee that's served there until he tastes it and then realizes it's really bad. And I thought it was an absolutely brilliant advert, because I still get a smile when I drive home and there's a queue outside the petrol station, people queuing for 15 minutes just to get to a pump. and we can drive straight past it. And that is a moment of joy for me, and I think it's wonderful that an advert's finally picked up on that.
Very good. I love it too. I mean, it just resonates, that whole you don't have to pay gas tax, the tax of gas and the tax of time involved in the whole waiting. I absolutely love it. It's good fun. Should watch it.
Yes, definitely. It's a brilliant final story. I'm going to say thank you very much for joining me today, Michael. I know it was a bit last minute, basically because I thought today was Thursday, woke up this morning and realised it was Friday. I've lost a day somehow this week, and you were absolutely wonderful and were able to come in and help.
Thank you. It was great fun to jump on. And to anybody who's watching the video version in colour, I am not actually this colour. Something is very, very wrong with my camera, and I haven't actually had terrible radiation damage to my face. And I promise I haven't spent the morning on the sunbed either.
We did spend 5 minutes trying to work out what was going on, but
I don't know. Technology.
Thank you again for joining us. We shall see you next week, maybe Transport Evolve. We need to figure out what's going on, but we will let you know, so keep an eye on the website.
I will. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.